Welcome everyone to our study abroad podcast series. So, today we have Ovindu who is studying in Amsterdam and we'll be knowing his journey from Sri Lanka to Amsterdam in the next set of questions. So, welcome Ovindu to our podcast.
Thank you, Vishal. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. We have a set of questions prepared for you. So, we'll go through those questions one by one, and from that, some discussions may also come out. Okay. So, Ovindu, so when you are studying in school, I see that your initial schooling was done from Sri Lanka, and
Mhm.
you probably would have decided about this study abroad journey at some point in your life. So, could
Mhm.
you throw some light on how that decision-making process happened for you?
Yes, absolutely. Since I was very young, I think my parents were very adamant that I get my education in the English language, English medium. So they kind of sent me to international school from like grade one, and I learned in English. I was exposed to like the UK education curriculum, and we did A levels from the UK as well, and O levels, IGCSEs, I think sometimes it's called as well. And I initially was very interested in studying biology and biomedical sciences. And there was always a notion, especially in society, that you, of course, can get a more technically sound education if you go abroad to the United States or to Europe and so on. So when I reached like my high school years, it was like very evident that obviously you need to find a solution that's also compatible with your finances, right? And Europe seemed like a very good promise. Comparative to other places, they were also pretty lenient on financial aid, and even without the financial aid, it was considerably more affordable. And that is kind of the crux of how my decision to come to Amsterdam formed.
Okay, that's good to know. So, you applied to few colleges and you chose the University of Amsterdam, or you applied to only University of Amsterdam?
Yeah, I applied to a few colleges in the US, a few in Australia, and in Europe. Other than those locations I mentioned, would only be Amsterdam. That's correct.
Okay. So you probably would have got admit from like few more places than University of Amsterdam. Is that correct?
Yes, Vishal. So I got into a few places in the US and Australia also. I got a few financial aid offers from those places as well. So the University of Amsterdam was also one of the universities that said that I could study with a full scholarship at the university, and I was very glad to accept that offer at that point. Amsterdam is I have to say it's a pretty in, amazing university and also a great city to live in. So those two things kind of combined together, along with the fact that I would have less financial pressure, and that's how I ended up coming.
So Amsterdam gave you the most scholarship possible.
Yeah, pretty much. They gave me the best offer that I could have financially.
So your tuition fees is like 100% waived right now. Is that what you're saying, or like partially waived?
Yes, Vishal. So my tuition fee is 100% waived, but not in that sense. In the sense, I get a grant every month that I can use to pay my complete tuition fee amount.
Okay, okay. And you have to take care of your accommodation and food expenses on your on the side.
That's correct. I have to take care of all other expenses, from food to insurance to rent and so on by myself. Mm.
Okay. So once you got this admit offers from all these colleges and you decided you will go with this University of Amsterdam and with the best offer you could get, there would have been some visa process, etc. How was that? What were the things you had to do for those?
Honestly, the visa process was not too difficult for coming to the Netherlands as a student. At least the initial visa process where I had to get my study permit. I recall, this was quite a while ago, but I recall that my parents had to show some sort of financial proof that I was able to cover the other expenses, so housing, food, and so on, after arriving in the Netherlands. And I think my family had to show some sort of proof of finances for that, regardless of me getting the scholarship for my tuition fees. I think that was the only kind of part of that process that required some effort and, prior planning as well. But I think it is something that you do have to note, like when you come to Europe, especially, you need to show proof that for the first year of your residence here as a student, that your family has the finances already present to kind of help you out. So that is quite important, and I had to do that as well in my visa process.
You probably had to book the flight ticket and some accommodation proof also for the visa.
No, I don't think so. That part of the process was not included in the visa process at all. It was just that I had to show my finances. After my visa was approved, then I moved on to planning the rest of my accommodation and flights.
Okay. So how was your accommodation and flight planning in that time?
Yes. So, with regards, I'll first take a look at the flights with you. So, with regards to that, it was actually the end of COVID, or end in certain countries, the height of COVID in certain countries in 2020, 21 rather. And the flights were, I have to say, definitely very affordable at the time because of that. And there were quite a bit of flights too. I managed to catch, I think, a flight with one transfer to Amsterdam from Colombo for about 700 euros. And for having one transfer available in the flight, I think that was a pretty good deal. With regards to housing, this is actually very interesting in my case because I actually got very lucky here. My faculty in the University of Amsterdam is called the Amsterdam University College. Uh, so that faculty comes with a package deal where we get student housing, and it's mandatory to live in student housing to be in the faculty. And they provide extremely cheap housing compared to the rest of Amsterdam, whereas most of my colleagues in other faculties or universities pay about 600 to 800 euros in rent per month. I got a deal where I could pay only 200 to 250 to 300 euros a month. And with regards to that, getting the housing confirmed happened through the university, and the financial costs of it were also very minimized because of that.
Sure. So then after all this, there's a day when you take the flight and you actually come to Amsterdam. By the way, which airline did you take? You remember that airline name?
The airline name, I think it was Qatar Airways, to the
Okay,
best of
okay.
my memory.
Sure.
It honestly could have been something else, but I think it was Qatar Airways.
Okay, okay, sure, sure. So you probably are used to taking Qatar maybe for the other times also you
I
when you go
guess
back
so.
and all.
Definitely. My parents booked me the flight. Actually, now when I go back to Sri Lanka, the flight costs have increased quite a lot. There are also budget airways, like Air Arabia and so on that you can take. I've only actually gone back to Sri Lanka. I'm sure you want to ask me more questions about this later as well, but I've only gone back to Sri Lanka once since coming here in these 3 years, and I flew back on Air Arabia, if that makes a
Okay.
difference.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. No, no, it's good for the audience to know the flights available for this journey. Okay.
Of
So
course.
let's say you took the flight on some day. You had to do
Mhm.
some packing. Any packing tips you want to give to our audience? Anything that you probably have done differently, maybe?
Sure. Okay. This is actually very interesting. I would say that in terms of what I packed to bring to Amsterdam, I would have definitely liked to have packed a bit more food from Sri Lanka. My parents were very adamant that I take some snacks, some things authentic to Sri Lanka, and I was not very interested about that because I wanted to have space for other things, etc., etc. I do wish that I brought some authentic goods from Sri Lanka as well, especially to kind of share with my new colleagues. When you meet people in a multicultural city, it's very nice to share what you have brought from home. So in that sense, it's also a nice way to make friends, to kind of share whatever you have brought from home. And I would say that is mostly it. Other than that, you gotta pack your clothes, you gotta pack your books, you gotta pack whatever else you need for university. That's the best tips I can give for packing, Vishal.
Did you have any problems managing the weight of the luggage that you had? Like, did you go overweight or something?
Um, okay, so I think my bags weighed about 20 to 30 kilos, and it was well within the limit. I did bring like one big suitcase, one small kind of bag that I had as a check-in, and my backpack. So In total, three pieces of luggage, one very big one, one medium-sized, and one small one was perfectly fine. I actually had no trouble with like needing more space or more weight.
Sure, sure. And when you took the flight and you came to Amsterdam via the transfer, you were flying alone or you had some more students traveling with you for the same destination?
No, no. This flight I took alone. There were some of my colleagues from Sri Lanka, some of my friends from high school who study at the same university who came as well. But when I traveled initially, I traveled alone.
So how was your confidence level like when you were taking the flight from, let's say, taking from
Um,
Colombo to landing in Amsterdam and getting to your place?
yes, I would say confidence is not really the word I would use. I was very excited for sure. I was extremely excited at the prospect of going to another country, getting a lot of freedom that I probably didn't have at home, the prospect of learning new things and so on. But I was definitely filled with excitement, and I'm still almost as excited as I was in that first day. So I'm very glad.
So when you landed in Amsterdam, were you a bit lost or something, or you were okay to find your accommodation, etc., like from the airport to accommodation?
Yeah, so I actually, so if you think about, I'm sure even countries like India is very similar to the situation in Sri Lanka. So, we don't really look at public transport too much, especially when you're doing an important journey like arriving from the airport on your first try, right? My university had already given me like very simple details on how to get on to train from the airport and arrive right next to my accommodation. My parents were adamant that I just take a taxi, and I spent about 60 euros taking a taxi when I could, spend 3 euros on a train ride. So I kind of regret not taking that train ride, I have to say. Um, but that is how I kind of got from the airport to my accommodation. Also, another thing is in the Netherlands, everyone speaks English, at least in Amsterdam. So in that sense, I was not very lost. I could just ask anybody where I had to go. So yeah.
And how much time did it take you approximately from airport to your accommodation?
The taxi ride was about 30 to 40 minutes, I think, roughly.
And when you arrived at your accommodation, how did you manage the initial few days of like cooking, cleaning, washing, which you may not be so used to when back home, maybe? Was that a bit of a shock for you, or you were mentally prepared about all this?
I think I was definitely prepared, and I was also excited that I could do everything on my own without having to, kind of rely on anyone else. But at the same time, arriving at my accommodation was kind of, well, it wasn't like a daunting thing, but it was still kind of, it caught me by surprise because I walk into like a room and it's completely empty, and I have to live there for the next 3 years. So I found myself like an air mattress and I crashed on it like the first couple of days. But then I spent the following weeks kind of accumulating the furniture I needed and getting my things together. But yeah, I did walk into a completely empty house and I was like, oh, I have to live here for 3 years now. I need to turn this into something. Yeah.
And this culture of cooking, cleaning, and washing by yourself versus, let's say, again, getting some domestic help back in, let's say, Sri Lanka and India also the same. Was that something you took a bit of a time to get used to, or was that how
Um,
was that? How you knew all the things, like you knew cooking and all from beforehand?
So I knew how to cook from beforehand, getting my laundry done, cleaning the house, things like that. Definitely I had some catching up to do because I can't deny it. I have to be honest. I did get a lot of help from my parents, grandparents, etc. in Sri Lanka. But at the same time, I think when you're like faced with the prospect of there is no choice, you have to do this. If you don't do this, you have no clothes to wear. If you don't cook, you have no food to eat, And I think uh, that kind of thought can be daunting, but it also incentivizes you to learn very quickly and adapt and adjust. So I think that's good in a way.
And you arrived, like you had some days in your hand, like when your classes started.
Um, Uh, yeah, I arrived on the 1st of August, and I think my classes started on the 1st of September. So I had a full month to adjust, make friends, kind of see what's going on.
And so, what was the initial experience on this first September when you actually went to the college? How far is, by the way, how far is your college from your accommodation?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Vishal, it's like almost on campus accommodation. So it was like a 3 to 4 minute walk to my like academic building. Yeah.
And when you entered the class, etc., did you find any differences the way people are teaching and the way people are perceived, etc.? Any cultural shocks you got in the education front?
Yeah, okay. So I mean, it wasn't so shocking because I kind of expected it. Through pop culture and things like that, we kind of see how universities and high schools in the West kind of operate and the dynamics that the teachers and students have. So, like, for example, some differences I can say is that the relationship between the teacher and the student is very, very casual compared to what you would find in South Asia. You refer to teachers by their name, even the professors refer back to you by your name, and it's kind of a very casual relationship in that sense. I definitely have to say I enjoy that, and I think I benefited from that quite a lot as well. And I think this is also like an infrastructural point, I think, but they also rely a lot more on technology inside the classroom for teaching. And I would say those were the main differences in terms of culture. And I think both of these kind of mediums in South Asia and here have their own benefits and disadvantages. So these were what I enjoyed here.
What was your class demographics like? Like you had some international students, some local student. How many countries, let's say, in your class?
So my faculty in the University of Amsterdam, I think 70 to 90% of students throughout all the years are international students, right? And only 30 to 10 to 30% end up being actual Dutch students. So we had students from all over the world, well, mainly from Europe, of course, but also from the East, from the Middle East, from South Asia, and it was very multicultural. So even my group of friends that I have, my closest group of friends is from all over the place, and I think that's really nice to meet people from all over.
Yeah. So there was a lot of learning with this intercultural exchanges.
Absolutely, absolutely. There were.
What about internship, part-time jobs, etc.? You did anything in the last 2, 3 years?
Yes. In terms of working as a student, I think there are definitely countries that are more friendly than the Netherlands. I think if you go to a country, for example, say Canada or even the US, even the UK, they're way more lenient on how many hours you can work and also like the bureaucratic process of getting a work permit. So in the Netherlands, when you work, you have to apply for like a unique work permit for every job. So say I work for company A, I can only work 16 hours a week. And then if I want to change my job, I have to apply for a new work permit. And that's a bureaucratic process that takes time and so on. I've worked a few part-time jobs here and there, like bike delivery jobs, similar to Uber Eats. And I also did a few internships. I did one internship at the University of Amsterdam, with regards to what I'm learning, machine learning engineering, and I think that was a great experience. But I think even this whole finding work, etc., all of these things, I do wish I had kind of planned before. I had read through all the bureaucratic processes required, and I was a bit more prepared for it. But all in all, it's still a welcoming situation, and you can manage.
Sure. And I see that you have also co-founded a company on your LinkedIn. Tell us a bit about
Yes.
that.
Of course, I'd be glad to. Something that I've always been interested in is like entrepreneurship, and I've always liked doing entrepreneurial things. And at one point in university, myself and a few colleagues of mine, who are also software engineers, we decided that we had a lot of projects that were going on, individually, and we also saw that this could kind of be monetized in a way. And we decided to kind of join forces together, or join together, pool our projects together, work on them together, hire people to work on them, and kind of macro manage everything. And we formed like a software consultancy. It's been going really well. We've learned a lot, we've done a lot, and it's one of the proudest things I've done in my life.
So you got some clients also for your company now?
Yes, Vishal, we do. We have a few clients from Europe. We have some from the Maldives, a few from Sri Lanka.
That's good. That's good. Finding the paying customer is a happy
Absolutely.
feeling for a startup.
Absolutely, absolutely. You get a lot of dopamine from it.
Correct, correct, correct. And the money making, yeah, the dopamine, the good feeling, etc. That's good. That's good. Good
Absolutely.
to know. In the 3-4 years, you have done so much. Like you managed to come abroad and then also started this company, etc. So, what are your future goals for few years, next few years, 4-5 years from now?
Yes, so when you finish your bachelor's, obviously there's a big question, right, of what do you want to do next? My parents and my family, as anyone can expect, they're Sri Lankan parents, they want me to continue my education, they want me to do a master's and so on. But at the moment, I actually decided I want to take a break from academia and kind of enter the industry, see how I fare there. So for the time being, Vishal, I decided I want to stay in Amsterdam and work on my startup, maybe get a job in tech and work on that job and see where things take me. Maybe after a year, I will consider taking a master's, or depending on where I am, I can decide where to proceed. But as of right now, my plans for the future are take a break from academia and work.
Good to know. And coming to the very last question of this podcast. So, what would be one or two pro advices that you would like to give your juniors who are, let's say, studying in school and who are planning to come to Amsterdam, Netherlands, or even study abroad in general?
Okay. Um, I think at that stage, what you want to kind of think about the most is what you like to learn, right? So you need to pick a degree that you think you will enjoy learning, that you think will help you to achieve your longer term goals and things like that. I think there's a huge culture in Sri Lanka, in South Asia in general, where you're pushed to kind of pick majors in degrees that are just socially more validated. Like there are so many things you can learn, especially when you move out of the South Asian bubble, and you should capitalize on that opportunity. And I think something else I can say is that if you want to make sure you have a very smooth process in your education abroad, you should definitely prepare as much as possible beforehand. And I'm talking about things like if you don't have accommodation provided by your university, make sure you have it before you come. Make sure that everything's planned out. If you are going to work because you need it to support yourself financially, you need to make sure that you've understood the process of how to get work, you know how to navigate the bureaucracy and things like that. Because when you come here, ultimately you are alone, right? And you being prepared never hurts in that situation. And that's the best advice I can give.
Thank you very much, Ovindu, for all your advices, and we are sure our audience will get some help from all this experience that they'll be hearing later. So thank you very much for your time. So we'll stop the recording now. Thank you very much for your time.
Of course, Vishal. Thank you to you too.